Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Visions session of the first cornerstone of the Daring Cities 2021. My name is Gino van Begen, and I'm the Secretary General of ICLEI, and I will be the facilitator of this session. In this session, we will zoom into the achievements of these week-long activities that we have had at the Daring Cities through the Daring Cities philosophy of knowing more, acting better, and leading together. In this session, we will map the journey to come in the coming weeks during this Urban October 2021 and towards the COP26 in Glasgow in Scotland. You will also hear here about the compendium of good practices on climate emergency that we will set up from the various contributions that have been made this week by the many speakers at the Daring Cities 2021. And we will present also our Advocacy Demand Catalogue, the call for transformation of the participants of this Daring Cities 2021. The call for transformation, I think you can, on your screen, you have a link that you can also follow there. It's a draft form at this moment, and we will discuss this during this session as well. Allow me to kick this session off with, first of all, comments from our ICLEI leadership. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you now the Mayor of Izmir, Mr. Tunç Soyer, who is also the co-chair on climate and low emission development in the ICLEI Global Executive Committee. And Mayor Soyer, you have already presented how you are tackling climate emergency and ambitious climate action in your city, in Izmir, in Turkey. But today, I would just like to ask you to share with us your vision on how we can best move towards climate emergency, create the necessary new mindset for that, and perhaps a total new way of climate civilization. So, Mayor Soyer, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank to my co-chair, Katja Dorner, Mayor of Bonn, and ICLEI to organize such a timely initiative in its second year. When I was asked to talk about Izmir's efforts on climate emergency, I could have taken you through some topics of our roadmap. The first city in Turkey that has completed both Green City and climate action plans with an ambitious 2030 target. Largest electric bus fleet in Turkey, largest renewable energy installed capacity in municipal buildings, and our integrated strategy on water, food, and biodiversity. Finally, our crisis municipalism actions to combat all the disasters, earthquakes, fires, floods, and of course, the COVID-19 pandemic Izmir went through over the last 2 years. And I know for many daring cities like Izmir, these issues are of highest priority. However, today, I would like to present you a different perspective and discuss the cultural pillar of climate emergency as a new area of local and global action. The relationship between nature and humanity has alarmingly weakened. After 2 decades of time-wasting discussion on whether there is a change in climate or not, mankind finally describes this human-induced disaster as a crisis. Today, the climate crisis is a reality that we all feel in our daily life and pay the price. However, I think we have not yet crossed the most sensitive threshold. Will now humanity go around the issue by only changing the color and shape of our habits? Or will we touch the core of the issue and lead a cultural change? We do not know yet. But I know that the fight against the climate crisis will be a never-ending endeavor. The crisis has multi-dimensions, putting the human species to attest, to build a culture compatible with nature once again. The climate crisis is not the essential challenge we're facing. It is just a consequence. The essence of the matter is how humans relate to nature. Will this relation be based on the exploitation of nature or on the unity of ecology and economy? Last September, Izmir hosted the 4th UCLG Culture Summit. In the summit, we tried to describe cultural transformation objectives for a more sustainable future with a new concept, circular culture. Circular culture encompasses 4 pillars for resolving the climate crisis and its injustices: harmony with nature, harmony with each other, harmony with our past, and harmony with change. Perhaps more than technological solutions, a multi-layered set of values that we call circular culture is needed to face the climate crisis. This concept points out that not only art, but also science, politics, and economy need a cultural basis. The indigenous expression to the wolf, to the bird, and to food, in Turkish, kurda, kusha, asha, used by the Anatolian people when planting seeds, must be more than just words. This statement reveals an empirically fixed mathematics for sustainability: 2 for nature, 1 for food. In Izmir, tens of thousands of producers process thousands of hectares of agricultural land with this principle. The Izmir agricultural ecosystem is underpinned by this culture that the producers, especially women, carry from generation to generation. Derived from a 3-word phrase, this agricultural model admirably transcends all ages and aligns with the newly enacted European Union Green Deal principles to combat the climate crisis. We are building our struggle against poverty and drought in Izmir on this solid cultural foundation. The expression to the wolf, to the bird, and to food also guides the development of rights of nature, which is one of the most important tools in the fight against the climate crisis. This statement defines the entities in nature not as an environment in which man stands at the center, but directly as the subject of rights. Our main goal in Izmir is to increase the prosperity of the city and to ensure the fair distribution of the prosperity. To this end, instead of an enemy relationship between ecology and economy, we have to establish a mutually beneficial, synergetic relationship between them. Here, the power of innovation and transformation is as important as indigenous cultures. Although the climate crisis expresses itself with more frequent natural disasters, it is essentially a result of the disconnection from nature and the alienation of people from themselves. The way to deal with this, the first major artificial disaster our planet and humanity has faced, is very clear. To compete in goodness, I call on ICLEI to consider the cultural pillar of climate emergency action as part of the Daring Cities program next year. I believe that the climate portfolio we are carrying out with ICLEI offers important opportunities to realize this new expansion. Dear participants, we have to believe that another civilization is possible. This major crisis that the world is going through indicates this very clearly. Climate emergency can only be addressed through nurturing a cultural revolution. I would like to thank you all for inviting me to partake in this crucial meeting. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very, very much, Mayor Soyer, Mayor of Izmir, and ICLEI's co-chair on climate and low emission development, for your strong messages. It's wonderful to hear from you at the end of this first week of Daring Cities, this strong message and demand for what you call a circular culture, aligning ourselves again and building a culture that is compatible with nature and climate. Thank you very much, Mayor Soyer, for your strong message. I would now like to turn to our ICLEI president, Mr. Frank Cowney, who is the mayor of the city of Des Moines in the United States of America. Mayor Cowney, may I ask you to share your views on the Daring Cities 2021 until now, and in particularly, I would like to ask you to present and comment on the first outcomes of Daring Cities 2021, in particular, our Daring Cities 2021 call for transformation. And as I said, this call for transformation is currently in a draft format. We have asked the participants to comment on this draft during this week. And next week, we will continue to finalize the draft so that it can then be presented at the end of October and definitely towards the COP26 in Glasgow. Mayor Cowney, ICLEI President, the floor is yours.
Dear fellow leaders of cities and other subnational governments and all participants in Daring Cities, I'm delighted to present you with the first version of the outcomes of Daring Cities 2021 as a result of our progress during this first week of exchange. We have already noted with grave concern that the climate emergency is a global challenge, the likes of which the world has yet to face. Therefore, we acknowledge that everyone must prepare, mobilize, and act in a manner that has not been experienced during any previous crisis in history. Tackling a challenge as widespread and multifaceted as the climate emergency requires significant changes of mindsets. We all need transparency, clarity, and greater preparedness on the scale and scope of these changes, and must build upon the experience of previous challenges. However, no city, town, or region is expected to tackle the climate emergency on their own. To ensure the essential transformational changes required, we must unite and collaborate. The Daring Cities 2021 outcome consists of two main components. First, we now have best practices on climate emergency. I'm impressed by the diversity of efforts presented by all my fellow leaders that reflects the enormous reality of transformation. Daring Cities 2021 surfaced more than 25 cases of climate emergency responses by communities around the world. These cases fall into two categories. First, we have accelerated solutions in health, 100% renewable energy, circularity, nature, and all elements of urban and territorial planning. Second, we have cases where leaders, together with their staff and communities, are testing new frontiers through governance and innovation. Based on these real-life experiences, we have developed the Daring Cities 2021 Call for Transformation, which defines our roadmap on how to advance and expand these experiences to thousands of cities and regions across the world. For our fellow local and regional governments, first, we must declare climate emergency to mobilize resources and increase capacity to achieve climate commitments. And second, we must mobilize all hands on deck throughout your administration and among your community. Third, we must prepare our communities for the worst as the new normal. For our communities and stakeholders at large, first, we encourage you to demand your local leaders to declare climate emergency. Second, we invite you to make ambitious changes within your own spheres of influence. And third, we welcome you to participate actively in the implementation and follow-up of climate emergency declarations. For our national governments and intergovernmental community, first, we urge you to declare and support nationwide climate emergencies. Second, we urge you to embrace multi-level governance and implementation as the new normal. Third, we urge you to ensure sustainable urbanization is financed. And finally, in order to ensure this massive transformation, we invite your fellow leaders and stakeholders to join the Daring Cities community to exchange, disseminate, and advocate the success of our bold, decisive action to tackle the climate emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the initial summary of our consultations over the week, but these will be further consolidated and fine-tuned with your specific input. Over the next 3 weeks, these messages from Daring Cities will be conveyed to a series of gatherings that are planned as part of Urban October. And this year, we have a brilliant opportunity. The last day of the Urban October, the 31st of October, is celebrated as World Cities Day, which overlaps with the first day of the 26th UN Climate Conference, COP26, to be held in Glasgow. As we have demonstrated over the past few days, we are all building and witnessing a new surge. More and more cities and regions are stepping up on the climate emergency, and national governments are finally starting to incorporate them into the design of climate plans. This surge is the biggest source of hope for current and future generations to prove that transformation has already begun, and the outcomes from COP26 can only strengthen this. The World Cities Day on October 31st will not only kick off 12 days of another climate COP, but also mark the beginning of the new era of multi-level and collaborative climate action of the urban world in the age of climate emergency. In my capacity as the president of ICLEI, which acts as the focal point of cities and regions in the UNFCCC climate process together with the City of Bonn and all my partners, I am committed to carry forward the outcome of Daring Cities 2021 beyond COP26 in Glasgow.
Thank you very much, Mayor County, ICLEI President, for your comments and for presenting the Daring Cities 2021 call for transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased that we could invite and be joined here today by a number of special guests who agreed to talk about the call for transformation, to comment the call for transformation that we want to take further, as our ICLEI President said, towards Glasgow at the COP26. I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Mrs. Rita Schwarzenlohr-Sutter, who is the Parliamentary Secretary of State of the Federal Ministry of the Environment in Germany. Madam, the floor is yours.
Dear Katja Dörner, dear Gino van Begin, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to Daring Cities 2021. You have achieved the ambitious goals you set for yourself. As we are approaching COP26 in Glasgow, now more than ever is the time to raise our ambitions, and this needs to happen on all levels, internationally, nationally, as well as locally. Under the German Council presidency, the European Union raised its 2030 reduction target to 55% and committed to becoming climate neutral by the middle of the century. Germany has also increased its climate target and goes even further. Our recently revised Climate Change Act set a path of 65% reduction by 2030 and climate neutrality by 2045. To achieve these ambitious goals, the federal government approved an action program worth 8 billion euros. It aims to intensify support for decarbonizing the main polluting sectors, including buildings and transport. However, we need enhanced and more ambitious NDCs and long-term strategies across the G20 and beyond. and we need better access to climate finance. Germany already doubled its climate finance to 4 billion euros by 2020, and we want to increase our contribution further to 6 billion euros per year by 2025. The NDCs, our long-term climate strategies, as well as climate finance, provide overall framework for planning and action. However, cities are key actors for reaching the goals of the Paris Agreement. They are responsible for 75% of total CO2 emissions and 80% of global energy consumption. With growing levels of urbanization, these figures are expected to rise even further unless we pursue sustainable pathways. That is why we need strong cities and subnational actors. We need them as drivers of innovation and leaders for people-centered solutions. Through our National Climate Initiative, we have invested more than 1 billion euros to support over 35,000 municipal projects in Germany in the area of climate investment and planning. To tackle climate change, we need global action as well. This is why Germany's International Climate Initiative supports ambitious projects worldwide. Since 2008, Germany has supported more than 750 projects with a total funding volume of 4.5 billion euros in more than 60 countries. 8% of this funding goes directly to climate-friendly and resilient urban development projects. And we are aiming to increase our support to cities and regions further. One example I would like to mention is the ambitious City Promises project. In 2015, Seoul adopted an unprecedented reduction plan, the Seoul Promise. The project built upon this plan, supporting cities in Indonesia, the Philippines and Vietnam in developing ambitious local climate change mitigation plans. Another example is the City Climate Finance Gap Fund. As the first global fund supporting the early stages of project development, it has the potential to unlock 4 billion euros of investments for implementing climate plans in cities. The fund has approved technical assistance for 33 cities worldwide, and more cities are to come. The GAP Fund is part of the leadership for Urban Climate Investment Initiative, known as LUCI, presented by Germany in 2019. It brings together governments, banks, city networks and think tanks. Clearly, cities cannot tackle climate change alone. National governments has the responsibility of creating the enabling environment that allows cities to address climate change. This includes access to the necessary financial resources. It is assumed that 2/3 of urban mitigation potential can only be realized if corresponding national legislation exists or through coordinated multi-level action by national, regional and local governments. Ladies and gentlemen, your successful conference helps cities to become more ambitious, and this is the key to an effective pathway towards net zero. Your outcomes, ideas and experiences will contribute to making COP26 in Glasgow a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Schwarzelow-Sutter, for commenting our work here at Daring Cities. Thank you very much as well to Germany for the support that Germany is providing worldwide to cities and subnational governments to tackle the climate change battle. And it is great that we as ICLE, we are part of a number of those projects that have been funded by your ministry over the last years. We're looking forward to continue to work with you and with the government of Germany within the global arena, such as the G20 as well. Thank you again very much, Madam Schwarzelow-Sutter, Parliamentary Secretary of State of the Federal Ministry of Environment. I would now like to call upon Madam Malina Mera, who is the Chief Executive of the Global Legislators Organization for Environment, Globe International. Mrs. Malina Mera, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. van Begen, and congratulations to all of our friends at ICLE, to all of the cities, the regions, the participants who are just concluding such a fantastic week of learning and sharing together at the Daring Cities Conference. My commendations also to all of the above speakers, in particular Mayor Sawyer and Mayor Cowie, for the leadership that you are showing in your own cities and regions. It's wonderful to hear of your conviction, your passion to bring the climate emergency resolutions that your cities have taken into practice on the ground. I am also delighted to be able to join you in person from London. It's a global city, which I hope will be a partner with ICLEI, and is certainly showing the resolve to ensure that major cities like London play their role in ensuring that we are able to meet the challenges of the Paris Agreement. I'm also particularly interested in hearing of the best practices that have been shared this week, because I'm also very much involved in this agenda in London as a commissioner to the Mayor of London on Sustainable Development. And we're delighted that over the past 1 year, we've been working much more closely with ICLEI, substantively, in the context of London's own climate change action initiatives. I just want to remind everyone of something incredibly basic, which is that we've had these conversations for 30 years about the indispensable role of urban action and action in cities and regions to deliver on sustainable development. So many of us have been involved, and I see my good friend Yunus Arikan nodding his head, in the local Agenda 21 agenda. So when the speaker from the German government mentions just now that it's 2/3 of all of the actions that take place on sustainable development, on climate action, are at the ground level and need corresponding support from the national level, she is absolutely right. We have a lot of ground to pick up, but it's extraordinary that just in the last 2 years, since the first national climate emergency was announced by the UK government in June 2019, we have hundreds of similar climate emergency declarations and commitments that have been made at the subnational level around the world. And speaking on behalf of an international organization that works with national legislators, I think it is high time that we delivered on the potential for much more synergistic working between the national, the subnational, the region, the provincial, the local government level. Because only that kind of close multi-level governance will have any hope of delivering the hopes that we are arousing amongst people that we can deliver. I think in terms of the challenge ahead, that it's important also to recognize the steps that have been taken that create an enabling environment for more synergistic working. Since Globewood started in the early 90s, we've been tracking the national legislation on climate change. At the time of Kyoto in 1997, there were only 54 pieces of climate change legislation or policy around the world. At the latest count, that number, and this is just national climate change policies and legislation, is 2,345. So we actually have an international architecture which should be able to support delivery. But what we are lacking in many cases, in far too many cases, is a direct commitment, the implication of action at the local government. So for example, many local governments around the world are not required by law. It is not part of their mandate to deliver on these as part of the national climate legislation or even as part of the Paris Agreement. And we know that Paris was a milestone because Paris created a requirement for multi-governance, multi-level, multi-stakeholder delivery of the agreements. So we have the mandate. We just have to get on and do it. And on that, I would really welcome the opportunity to work together with the LGMA that ICLEI is the focal point on. Globe has recently been designated to serve as the focal point for the parliamentary group. So I do hope that this COP26 will mark the beginning of a really promising collaboration between our two constituencies. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share this time with you and to learn from your efforts.
Thank you very much, Malina, for commenting the work that we are doing together. And I think you have put indeed the attention on the fact that not all local or regional governments are actually required to undertake climate action. It's perhaps not always in their mandates. At the same time, we see how many local and regional governments are undertaking action voluntarily. And here, I think, working with an organization as GLOBE, that is particularly working with legislators around the world, I think that is a very fruitful cooperation. We are looking forward, as of course, as ICLE, but also as a focal point of the LGMA, to indeed work with you as the parliamentary focal point within the negotiations and the further discussions, and to get the implementation of the Paris Agreement run very fast now. Thank you very much, Malina, for being with us, and thank you again for your comments. I would like now to turn to another guest that we have here today with us, Mr. Lars Grunwald, who is the head of the urban section in DG International Partnerships of the European Commission. So, Mr. Grunwald, also here, I would like to ask you, how do you see the EU in particular can assist global cooperation amongst local and regional governments and multi-level action? Please, Mr. Grunwald, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this opportunity to join this Daring Cities week and conferences and discussions. We all know the centrality of cities in solving the climate changes and climate challenges. And from a development perspective, you know, this is where the majority of the urban expansion will happen. This is where people will be living in more precarious situation and facing the challenges and the risks of climate change. So the focus also on the developing world, I think, is central. And the work here in Daring Cities of coming up with a list of what can we call examples of good climate action, I think, is extremely appreciated and an extremely useful source to bring ideas for how to make innovative actions forward among cities. We need to both, of course, provide finance, work on the institutional barriers, policy barriers, but also sharing the knowledge, sharing the examples that can support that process. And this is fully aligned with what we are doing here and the call for cities to take innovative actions. If I look at it from a development perspective, what we are doing and how we can line up and link to this here, then obviously our development aid is increasingly and trying to ensure that this will be supporting these climate changes and actions that are needed. The first point is central in our development aid is to support to a green transformation or the Green Deal or the external dimension of the Green Deal, the European Green Deal. And our development aid will be targeted to climate actions, and our president has just increased this target with additional 4 billion to demonstrate that this is essential. And what we then see in this question of cities being more daring, we can see our role in that context, enabling cities to become more daring and make it more easy to be daring in these solution and innovative solutions. And maybe a few words on how we can do this. And obviously, as I said, finance is central, or support and sharing of experiences. We will, on the one hand, within our country programs, increasingly have programs that are targeting integrated urban development. We believe that the cities and the climate solution has to be seen in an integrated fashion in urban development. These cities has to provide basis for economic development, jobs, etc., but at the same time advance a green and resource efficient solution. Only by combining these things we will see effective solution taken forward. And there we will have already this year started formulating programs in, for example, in Cameroon, in Tanzania, in Djibouti, that will target and take forward integrated urban development. Secondly, we will put very much focus on the financing side, and our European Fund for Sustainable Development will be scaled very strongly up in the coming 7 years, and we now call it EFDS+. And this will provide two types of support to advance this year. One is blending grants, that means to make funding for investments, climate investments, more affordable. We will mix that grants into this. And the second is to provide guarantees for sustainable cities and to access finance, and that make it more easy to bring finance in. And there we will specifically target, with one of the windows, we'll be targeting sustainable cities. Similar, we also were working very much on partnerships, and that means sharing experiences. We've just in the process of finalizing the third call of what we call city-to-city partnerships, where we have created more than 50 partnerships between European cities and cities in our partner countries, sharing ideas including on green sustainable solutions. And then we have a number of programs that support innovative work on this year. We are working with ICLEI on the urban LEDs, developing energy efficient strategies for cities that also can help them become daring. And we are supporting the Covenant of Mayors that also work on supporting climate action plans in the cities, and try to see how we can finance this. So we have a wide array of instruments and engagement to help cities become daring in this year. And we are very much looking forward to see how can this set of case studies, examples for what can be taken forward, be integrated in this work, and are looking forward to continued work on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lars. We're very, very pleased to hear how the European Commission is moving in the space of local climate action, how you are supporting, actually, as you said, enabling cities to become more daring. We look forward to these new programs that you are mentioning that will help to achieve more integrated urban development, that financial support will be provided for that work. We look forward to the EU Fund on Urban Sustainability and the opportunities for blending grants. And obviously, we have been working with you on a number of projects indeed in the field of low emission development and energy savings in a number of cities, obviously outside of the EU, in a global perspective. Lars, thank you very much for commenting our work here, and again, we are very much looking forward to continue the cooperation with you and the European Commission. Thank you very much. I would now like to give the floor to our final guest of this round, Mr. Salimo Hook, the Director of the International Center for Climate Change and Development. I would just like to ask you as well, Mr. Hook, to comment on Daring Cities 2021 and the various outcomes that we are trying to achieve here with the Daring Cities. Please, Mr. Hook, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much to ICLEI for inviting me to this occasion, and congratulations on your Daring Cities initiative, the week and the activities. It's wonderful to hear about all of that. So let me start by giving you a little bit of my own background. I am the director of the International Center for Climate Change and Development at the Independent University Bangladesh, based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And for more than the last 20 years, I've been working on helping the most vulnerable communities and households and people in the most vulnerable countries, particularly the least developed countries in Asia and Africa, to prepare themselves and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Many of them living in cities, in the slums of cities in the developing world, particularly, as I said, the poorer parts of the developing world, the least developed countries. And I've been doing that for a very long time. And I've had the pleasure of collaborating with ICLEI at the local level in a number of countries and cities, including in my country, Bangladesh. So I'm going to give you a perspective from the climate change world, which I belong to. I'm going to start by a note of pessimism. If you have noticed or taken note of the latest 6th assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Working Group 1, which is the working group of the scientists who are normally extremely conservative and very reluctant to stick their necks out with any kind of strong statements. They do modeling, they give you the model results, and they don't tend to say much more than that. This time, they did. They said very clearly that they have unequivocal evidence that climate change due to human emissions of greenhouse gases since the Industrial Revolution is happening. They can show it's happening, They can measure attribution. The science of attribution has become extremely well developed, and they can do it in real time. The floods that you had in Germany, the hurricane, the Ida that hit the United States, the heat waves that hit Canada, and the wildfires that you've had in Europe and in the US were all attributed to having become worse. They weren't caused by, but they certainly became a lot worse and more intense because the global mean temperature is already above 1 degree. What does that mean? It means we have entered what I call the era of loss and damage from impacts of climate change. Unavoidable now, they're happening. The people, more than 150 people lost their lives in Germany to the flood. More than 50 people lost their lives in New York and New Jersey to the floods. Even rich countries. In Bangladesh, we've been losing lives for tens of years. In fact, we don't lose lives anymore because we have one of the most effective cyclone and flood warning and evacuation systems in the whole world. We still get a lot of damage, but we don't lose lives. And so this is something that is going to get worse. Every day is going to be worse than the day before. Every year is going to be worse than the year before. And unfortunately, we are not prepared for it anywhere in the world. And so we need to be better prepared. And that really is the message of pessimism I want to bring to you, because we have failed to prevent it. We have failed to adapt to it. And we are playing catch up. The climate is hitting us in a way that had been predicted, but we had not been able to prevent. And so switching slightly to a more optimistic note, I think the issue now is, what are we going to do? And when I say we, I don't mean our leaders, because the leaders have obviously failed us already. They agree on things and then they fail to deliver on them. I really don't have faith in them. I will be going to COP26. I'll be lobbying and advising. I work with the least developed countries there, but I don't have great faith in them because they have not shown the kind of leadership that we expect of them. They agreed a meeting to keep temperature below 1.5 degrees in Paris. The rich countries agreed to give $100 billion to the poor countries by 2020. They've done neither of those things. And so, we're not going to expect them to suddenly change their attitude in Paris. So it's left to us. All of us are going to have to take actions. We cannot rely on our leaders anymore. And so the work that I have been doing in particular has been with the most vulnerable communities in your cities, in many of your cities. I work with a group of universities called the Least Developed Countries Universities Consortium on Climate Change. We have university partners in many of the least developed countries in Asia and Africa. And we work also very closely with the Slum and Shack Dwellers International, which is a very big group of slum dwellers in all the major cities in Asia, Africa, Latin America, to collaborate on how we can help the most vulnerable people, communities, households in your cities prepare themselves and adapt to the impacts of climate change, which is already hitting them. And in fact, COVID-19 hit them even harder. They're the same communities, by the way, who are vulnerable to the pandemic and the lockdowns, two double whammies from COVID-19, not just pandemic, public health, but the lockdown measures that were taken affected the poor people in the slums very, very badly economically. And so how do we join forces with you, the mayors and the authorities of the municipal level to be more effective in actions on the ground to make citizens safer to the impacts of climate change, and in lobbying with our national governments for better decision-making, taking into account the needs of the actual citizens on the ground, your citizens, as well as the most vulnerable people on the ground. And it's a big agenda. We need to be moving very, very fast. And I think there is no time to waste. In fact, I hope we can continue this conversation afterwards and see how we can join forces to make this bottom-up approach, in my view, is a much, much more promising approach, by the way. In global solidarity, the citizens of cities around the world getting together, getting their act together, learning from each other, sharing with each other in real time, as we are doing here in this conference, but building on that, and not just a once-a-year conference, but every single day. How do we link up with each other and make it happen and become more effective? Actions now are far more important than words. Words have lost their meaning and lost their importance because they've been devalued. Actions are going to be what we need to do, and I hope we can do that together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salim, for sharing with us a certain sense of pessimism. I fully understand where you come from. It is urgent to take action. We have to take action, not only words, but action indeed. At the same time, I am happy to hear your optimism, nonetheless, to try to reach out to local and national leaders to be a sort of a cement of forcing these two levels to better cooperate, to better collaborate, and to take action in the future. So, Salim, we are with you on this as well. We try definitely via this Daring Cities and also our call for transformation to reach out to our national leaders or the leaders of the international community to continue this very, very important work that you are also undertaking as a director of the International Center for Climate Change and Development. Salim, thank you very much for commenting and for being with us here today at this session of Daring Cities. I would just now like to turn to my colleagues, Ariel Dekovic, who is the head of global communications, and to Yunus Arikan, who is our director for global advocacy. Ariel, maybe first to you, can I just ask you to look a little bit back on the 5 last days now of Daring Cities, as well as provide perhaps a look into the future of what we are going to do with Daring Cities in the month of October and beyond. So, I would just like to ask you to give us a bit of a sense of what has happened in these last 5 days and how we are going to take it further in the future. And then Yunus, I will turn to you as well. But Ariel first, please.
Thanks, Gino. I'm so glad to be with everyone today to tell you a little bit about yourselves, as Gino was saying, about what we've done together for the last 5 days and what is coming up. So first of all, we are so happy to have welcomed 1,500 attendees from 100 countries. And from those participants, 1/3 of them are representing governments, nearly 1/3 of them are research and academia, and the rest come from NGOs, civil society, the private sector, and the media. So we had a really nice balance of attendees. But it's not just about where they're coming from and the organizations that they represent. So at the beginning of the event, we actually surveyed the attendees to ask about the state of climate emergency, where they live or work. And just over half the audience responded that their city or region had already declared a climate emergency, or they fall under a higher level of government, which has already done so. A further 7 indicated that while they haven't done so yet, it is under discussion. But we also polled the audience to ask how they would describe the level of ambitiousness of their own city or region's climate action. 25% rated it as more ambitious than other cities in their country, but another 15 rated that they actually live or work in the most ambitious cities in the world. So that means that 40% of our attendees really represent those daring cities, those folks who are exceeding the work of their peers around the world. And that means that the other 60% belong to the strivers, the folks who want to become daring cities. And that is what the mission of Daring Cities is all about. So this connection, this partnership that everyone is talking about, we really want to bring you together to exchange that information and to continue these partnerships further into the future. So we're really excited to be able to deliver on that mission. And we're not stopping today. So Daring Cities continues. The 5-day exchange event is over, but we are now moving into Cornerstone 2, Disseminate, which happens throughout Urban October. So we've been talking about those global events where we are going to bring the Daring Cities message into the global stage. And we're particularly targeting events that are going to reach the ears of the groups who we are talking to in the Daring Cities Call for Transformation. You can see a list of those events here. In addition to those events, we also want to partner to deliver specific events during Urban October that will advance much needed action in a sectoral space. And these sessions are going to be listed on daringcities.org. You can go there now and find a few on currently on procurement and on climate finance. There will be other ones on mobility, on resilience. So we invite you to stay in touch with us. We will be staying in touch with you, keeping you up to date on these events that you can participate in. And there are many, many more opportunities in Urban October to join us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eunice Arakan, to talk about the third cornerstone of Daring Cities, which is Advocate.
Thank you, Ariel. If I can continue, as we all said, that the purpose of these gatherings is not only to improve our relations, but to influence the global outcomes. And that is for us, timing-wise, is really ideal because we have been working for this over the past 2 years since we left the last climate conference in Madrid. Our goal was to ensure that there will be a new way of working. Over these 2 years, we have seen a change in the mindset, slowly, but effectively, from the global north, like USA, to Dominican Republic, Rwanda, or Japan and Korea. Therefore, we are saying that in this second phase of Paris Agreement that is starting at COP26, it is time for multi-level action. That is the motto that we are disseminating, that we will be disseminating collectively at Glasgow, at climate conference. What we want to make sure these countries' examples are spread around whole nations, as we have mentioned. Urbanization becomes a core action and finance area. Just transition, just climate action is valid in all our cities. And we will improve our engagement with the UN processes because there is a more and more demand for UNFCCC and other UN bodies to engage experience and information from our members. So that is our overall roadmap that we will be promoting and asking for as part of the conclusions of the COP26. So in the next slide, let me also give you some ideas about what to expect in Glasgow. This is obviously the 26th Conference of Parties since '95. Obviously, there will be more to come, but this is important because starting from this COP, there will be expectations that the new climate plans will be much more ambitious, and we have seen those examples coming up, but it has to be much better and it has to be spread across the world. The UK presidency have listed a number of themes for every day that will be discussed everywhere in Glasgow. When we say Glasgow, obviously we are talking about UN restricted area, but also in the city of Glasgow and across the Scottish cities as well. So what we were trying to mirror this in our discussions, that any discussions should be connected to urban realities. And as our president has mentioned, this time we really have an excellent opportunity that we can mark the start of COP26 with the World Cities Day. The good news, the UN Climate Secretariat, the UN Habitat, and also UK presidency are very, very keen on that, so that before the leaders come on the 1st of November, they will be already aware that, yes, we are now in a new urban world and it is the age of climate emergency and multi-level action is the key. So across the world, we will see, for example, if we're talking about climate youth engagement, we have to talk about culture, as Mayor Sawyer has mentioned. If we're talking about Leaders Summit, leaders should talk about multi-level collaboration. If we are talking about loss and damage, we have to consider migration, urban poor, as Salim mentioned. If we're talking about cities, it should be circularity, it should be waste. So these are the themes that we would be proudly announce you today that will be deliberately discussed at the LGMA Pavilion, which is now branded as the multi-level action pavilion at COP26. This will be in the blue zone, which is restricted to UN negotiators and UN participants. We want to make this as a new way of dialogue We have tested this in 2009. We have done this in Paris and in Bonn before, but in Glasgow, we want to elevate it further. We are very, very happy to have the collaboration with the collaboration of the networks, but in particular, the Scottish government is our host for this space, and we have ICLEI as the moderation of this, let's say, 2 weeks of agenda. But we are very happy to see across the UK and across the world partners who will be working with us. As you can see, as mentioned, Urban Let's, a major initiative with ICLEI and European Commission and UN Habitat, Daring Cities, our partnership with UCLG, Local Government Association, and Regions 4. So all the across the world, we would show how we could now bring this new momentum so that the negotiators can take it up and make it further. And the other good news is that this will be hybrid. We are aware there's the serious challenges of participation, but your voices always be heard in Glasgow, especially during the lunchtime. We will have urban-led multi-level action dialogues. We have specific days for Latin America, Africa. We will be having also spatial presentations from our partners across the world on thematic themes that we have addressed. So we would like to give the message that from Urban October, we will go to Glasgow and we will really kick off this era of multi-level action in the age of climate emergency, where Daring Cities will play a key role. With this, I think we'll now be able to hear the new announcements that is coming from Mayor of Bonn. But I believe we are now proud that Daring Cities will provide a huge input to the global mobilization.
Thank you very much, Yunus, and thank you, Ariel, for putting Daring Cities under the spotlight of what has happened until now and what we intend to do in the next weeks towards and at COP26. Thank you very much, both Ariel and Yunus, for that. Indeed, we are coming to the conclusion of this particular session, but I'm very, very pleased to welcome for this Mrs. Katja Dörner, who is the mayor of the city of Bonn here in Germany, and who is also ICLEI's co-chair on climate and low emission development. So, Mayor Dörner, you have been, of course, with us during the Daring Cities every day almost, I may say so, and very, very pleased to have you also here today. I know that you have a very, very busy calendar today, but we are very pleased to have you with us here and also to make your special announcements, both as a host of Daring Cities 2021, but also with regard to the outcomes of Daring Cities 2021 until now. So, Mayor Dörner, I would like to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Gino. Today is especially busy, unfortunately. So, dear mayors, dear fellow leaders, in the first part of this vision session, the 2021 Daring Cities Bonn Call for Transformation has been introduced to you by ICLEI President Frank Groney and my fellow Global Executive Committee colleagues Minna Awe and Tung Soya have pictured their vision of people-centered and need-oriented climate action, of a better climate future and a culture of transformative ambition. In my capacity as co-chair for climate action, I would like to address our ambition and the challenges we are facing. Actually, the best picture that comes to my mind is the context, in this context, is sports. On the one hand, we mobilize our citizens to get on board, participate in the race, whatever their individual speed and performance may be. Everyone can join in and be part of this, regardless of previous condition. And everyone will make a difference and contribute to the transformation. However, when it comes to us, dear fellow leaders, we want to spearhead the transformation. We need to adopt a very specific attitude, that of a true athlete. Actually, leaders and athletes have a lot in common, at least. This has been my experience as a former member of parliament and now mayor. We are fast in our decisions and action. We are pushing through even if it is hard on us. We are showing discipline, passion, endurance, and strength. We fight for our goals, or as an athlete would say, we want to bring home the medal. The medal for fighting climate emergency has a golden 1.5 on it, and it is worth millions of lives. Winning it will mean the hardest challenge we leaders have ever faced in terms of advocacy, innovation, and implementation. There is not an after-work walk. This is a race we must win, so we better adopt the spirit of true athletes. Luckily, there are many role models in the world of sports. In fact, one of them is right here with me in Bonn. I'm very proud and honored that she has graciously agreed to join us and share with us what makes her take up her fight as an athlete every single day. Before I give the floor to our very special guest, I would like to close with thanking all of you for having joined the Daring Cities community in 2021, the 25th anniversary year of UN Bonn. Thank you very much for taking up this challenge and for mobilizing many others to come on board with us on the local level and beyond. And now, let me warmly welcome Annika Zein from Bonn, 2 times Paralympic gold and 3 times silver medalist. Annika is an exceptional athlete who has excelled in 2 disciplines, first in wheelchair basketball and this year in Tokyo and handbiking. She embodies the spirit I have just pictured, and better yet, she is pleased to give us her full support as our messenger and coach for our special race. Thank you very much, Annika, for sharing with us your thoughts about sports, the mindset and spirit of an athlete, and your vision of a better climate future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Katja Dörner, for the nice words, and hello everyone. I'm very excited to be here today with you all. It's a great honor to be part of such an important topic like the climate future. As Mayor Katja Dörner already mentioned, there are a lot of parallels between the fight for a better climate future and the fight we as athletes lead for like winning medals. So the first parallel that I see is that it's basically a 24/7 job. So for me as an athlete, everybody knows or asks how many hours I train a week. And of course, that is very important. And I train many, many hours every single day. But it's not only about those training hours. It's also about what I do when I'm not training, because I need to look at my nutrition. I need to look at my recovery. I need to look at my sleep. So even if I have a rest day, it's not an off day, because I still need to make sure that I go, for example, to the physiotherapist so that I'm ready for the next day of training. And I think it's very similar in the fight for like the climate. And it's not only about what you as leaders are doing. I think it's something what everyone can do 24/7. Like when we think about in the morning, do we take the bike to work or do we take the car? That's like an important decision. Or if we go to the grocery store, we can either look at buying local products, or we can also maybe buy like other, maybe even cheaper products that have been transported by airplane. So there are a lot of decisions that we can all take 24/7 that can help for a better climate future. And I mean, coming back to like taking the bike in the morning, of course, now it's getting colder and it's not comfortable, or it's not easy to take the bike in the morning. And that brings me to my next point. Being an athlete is also not always easy. It's not always comfortable. Like you work very, very hard, and then the public sees when you're winning medals, and that's like a nice moment, but like all the hard work that goes into there, that's not something that's seen by everyone. So for you as leaders, you might have to take decisions that are not comfortable, that are not easy, but in the end, it will be all worth it when you reach your goals. And that brings me to my next point. So when you reach your goals, like me, I brought my 2 medals from the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games, and I'm very, very proud of winning them. And I think if you can reach your climate goals, you can be very, very proud of that as well. and yeah, what everybody in the end sees as the result, but only you know how much work you have put into like reaching those goals. And it's the same for me. I'm the only one who really knows how much work I've put into those 2 medals that I've won this year. So in your fight for a better climate future, I am wishing you all the courage and determination that we as athletes have when we fight for the medals, for you, for your fight for a better climate future. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Annika. It's very, very inspiring to listen to you, to take lessons from you. I think that is exactly what local and regional leaders need to have this endurance, the commitment, the time, indeed, as you said, to invest in this essential life threatening climate change, and it is. I think it is absolutely not only a pleasure to listen to you in terms of what you can share with us from difficult moments to achieve these very ambitious goals that you have had and achieved, and that is for us, I think, really a learning process. We can learn from you. We are therefore extremely pleased that you accepted to be our messenger of Daring Cities 2021 and our coach for the next step that we have to undertake. Annika Meyer-Dörner, thank you very, very much for that specific and special announcement here at this almost last session of today of Daring Cities. I would just like to thank all of the speakers who have contributed to this session, but also all of the other speakers that have taken the floor during the last 5 days in Daring Cities 2021. We will come to a next session, a very final session of today at a different timing, but will be essentially quite similar to the session that we have here now, but that is to allow our participants in other time zones to also be part of this session, a visions session of Daring Cities 2021, and talking and discussing our next steps from now onwards. Having said that, once again, I would like to thank all my colleagues. I would also like to thank the interpreters. I would like to thank the speakers again of today and of the last days. And for now, I would just like to thank you and say goodbye. If you wish, please do join us again in, I believe, from now onwards in 2 hours from now. And we will then have, as I said, another visions session. Thank you very, very much. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.